Hello, everyone. I'm speaking to you today from the heart of the British Midlands, seen over the last 1,000 years of so much English history. I'm David Hobbs, and welcome to my home. Our house just behind me was built at the turn of the century. 18th century, of course, that is. Most of the land around us, and in fact the whole village of Wormleighton, just about a mile away, is owned by the Spencer family, whose daughter, Diana, you may remember, married a fairly well-known prince. Just to the south of us is the city of Oxford, the oldest seat of learning in the world. A few miles to the west is the town of Stratford-on-Avon, home of William Shakespeare, whose plays played such a big part in the life of Sir Laurence Olivier, who the whole of the British Isles is mourning. Just behind me is the village of Solgrave, home of the Washington family, whose son George caused such a flap in American history. And just beyond Solgrave is the village of Silverstone. For 361 days of the year, just an ordinary English village. But for 4 days right now is the venue of the 42nd British Grand Prix, held on the fastest circuit for Formula One cars in the world.
Silverstone, home of British Air Force bombers during the dark days of World War II. Today, the home of British motor racing, and T-shirt sales are brisk in anticipation of the start of the Formula One British Grand Prix. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha, welcoming you to the high holy days of the British sporting season. Wimbledon has concluded, the British Open golf tournament yet to begin, and today it's the crown jewel, the 42nd running of the Formula One British Grand Prix. This is one of the busiest places in the English Midlands today, with some 180,000 people expected to jam this enormous racing complex, which incidentally houses the busiest airport in the world today, with some 3,000 takeoffs and landings expected. It has also provided record-shattering performances in qualifying, and for more on speeds here at Silverstone, we turn to our longtime Formula One colleague, David Hobbs. David, they have been turning incredible laps here.
Well, Bob, the weather here has been incredibly hot for England for the last couple of days, and so has the pace. The two McLarens, in fact, actually had trouble for a change in the unofficial practice, but in the qualifying they managed to get the job done, and yet again Senna's on the pole and Prost is right with him. But only just a tick of a watch behind him is Nigel Mansell and Gerhard Berger in the two factory Ferraris. The field is really packed up from last year, 2.5 seconds. The slow man is 2.5 seconds quicker than he was last year, and the front five all broke last year's lap record, which is pretty amazing considering this is a real power circuit, and we've gone from turbocharged to non-turbocharged cars. And we asked Gordon Murray, McLaren technical director, why this was so.
It's a few factors. Although we did have normally aspirated cars last year, this year we've got 10 and 12 cylinder cars, which are producing more power. And the car's weight limit is 500 kilos as opposed to 540. That in itself is worth about a second a lap. And the third factor is that the normally aspirated engines are much more drivable in the second half of the corner, coming out of the corners. So if you actually took some cornering times, the second half of the corner this year is much faster than last year. The initial bit of acceleration and balance coming out of the corner. Those three factors put together adding up to the difference.
Well, that's very interesting, Gordon, but still in all, these cars have got 150 horsepower less than they had last year, so those technicians really know their beans. Qualifying means just that, and not everybody made the field today, and with more of that, let's go down to John Bisignano in the pits.
Thank you very much, David. In fact, it's so difficult to qualify at this Silverstone circuit that there are 3 drivers who have actually scored points in this 1989 championship that can't even make the race here at the British Grand Prix. And unfortunately, one of them is the only American in the British Grand Prix, Eddie Cheever from Phoenix, Arizona. They will only be rolling one of the Arrows cars out of this garage. It's the first time there won't be 2 cars from the Arrows team in a Grand Prix since 1984. And that one car will be for Derek Warwick, who could only manage 19th on the grid. The problem with Eddie's car was massive handling problems all week long. And actually, at this circuit, that is very devastating to a driver due to the very fast, sweeping corners. Well, some of the good news is that in the morning warm-up on this Sunday, Nigel Mansell with the Ferrari was actually faster than both Alain Prost and his teammate Ayrton Senna. Now, in that morning warm-up is when the cars are in race trim, so there is hope for this great British crowd that Nigel Mansell, as I predicted in France, will win the British Grand Prix.
Over the party weekend here at the British Grand Prix, this crowd of 180,000 will go through 1,000 cases of wine, a ton of strawberries, and a ton and a half of salmon. And that's before David even gets to the breakfast table. ESPN Speed World coverage of the British Grand Prix is brought to you by Acura Legend and Integra. Precision-crafted performance exclusively at your Acura dealer. By Mobil 1 Synthetic Motor Oil. Mobil 1, the winning oil at the 1989 Indy 500. By Dunlop High Performance Tires. Dunlop outperforms. And by Armor All Protectant, because we're crazy about cars, too.
We'll be back to the British Grand Prix after these messages.
Back at Silverstone, England, Bob Barcia, David Hobbs, and John Bizignano with you here on ESPN as we are just moments away from the signal to fire engines for the British Grand Prix. Taking a quick look at the weather, 75 degrees, partly cloudy, an absolutely perfect day here in the Midlands of England. Very dry, the wind about 12 miles an hour from the northwest, which means it will be blowing at the drivers' backs down the high-speed hangar straightaway. We may see 200-mile-an-hour speeds there today, and very little chance of rain. Let's take a look now at the way the team will line up for this great British Grand Prix race. On the pole, remarkably for the first time in the British Grand Prix, the all-time leader in poles from Brazil, Ayrton Senna in the McLaren Honda. Next to him will be his teammate, the points leader, just 1.16 seconds behind Senna, Alain Prost of France. Inside row 2 will be the great local favorite, Nigel Mansell of Great Britain, coming off a great second place in the French GP. Next to him, his teammate, Gerhard Berger of Austria. The two Ferrari drivers make up the entire second row. Inside row 3 will be Riccardo Patrese of Italy in the Williams Renault, third in points, just 1/100th of a second behind Berger. Next to him, Maurizio Gugelmin after that remarkable flip at the French Grand Prix in the March Judd. Inside row 4, Terry Boutsen of Belgium in the Williams Renault, the Canadian winner. Next to him, Ivan Capelli of Italy and a March Judd who could do very well here today. The marches have been looking good. Inside row 5, Sandro Donnini of Italy in the brand new Benetton Ford that ran so well in France before breaking. Nelson Piquet, the three-time world champion, 2.5 seconds behind pole man Senna in row 5. The rest of the field in row 6, Pierluigi Martini of Italy in the Minardi. Next to him, Philippe Alliot of France, who is still on the frying pan with Lola Lamborghini. Row 7 will be Eric Bernard, the surprising rookie for the Lola Lamborghini team, next to Stefano Modena of Italy in the Brabham Judd. Row 8 will be Luis Sala of Spain in the second Minardi, next to Satoru Nakajima of Japan in the second Lotus. Row 9, Nicola Larini of Italy in the Osella, next to Dr. Jonathan Palmer of Great Britain for Tyrrell. Row 10 will be Derek Warwick in the only Arrows to make the field for this race. Next to Martin Brundle, back after 2 failures to qualify, he'll be driving the Brabham. In row 11 will be Bertrand Gachot, who had a big accident this morning in qualifying. He'll be in his backup Onyx. Next to Jean Alesi, the French sensation, who ran second last week in France before finishing 4th. In row 12 will be Roberto Moreno in a rare start for the new Coloni Ford, next to Olivier Griard in the only Ligier to make the field. The final row 13 will be Andrea De Cesaris of Italy and the only Dallara out there today, next to Emmanuel Perot, another rookie from Italy in the Benetton Ford for Johnny Herbert. 2.97 miles around, marked by curves that are a part of racing history. Here's David to give us a look at Silverstone.
6 corners, 3 sweepers, over 50 feet wide, all help to make Silverstone the fastest road course in the world. Let's take a lap now with Nelson Piquet in his Lotus as he sets off through the right-hander leading onto the pit straight. Up to 6 gears, he goes under the Shell Bridge, approaches Cops Corner, turn 1, down to 4th, swings in there, understeering corner, this a bit of adverse camber. Up on the L curve there as Nelson uses all the road through the first sweep. This is Maggot's curve, a left-hander, doing about 170 miles an hour, hard on the brakes, down to 3rd for Beckett, another sharpish right-hander. Also gets a bit of understeer there as the road has adverse camber on exit. Chapel Curve, there used to be a Monk's Abbey there many, many years ago. Under the new Goodyear Bridge on Hanger Straight, slightly downhill here, and 190 miles an hour. A light touch of the brakes, down to 5th, into Stowe. Hugs that inside curve all the way around edge, goes out onto the bump strips on the outside, up to 6th again. Approaching Club Corner, down to 5th, a little touch of the brake, flat out through here, 155 miles an hour, uses all the road again, up to 6th gear, Abbey Curve, left apex, swings wide here, second fastest part of the course here, back up to about 185, hard on the brake, down to 2nd now for the new left, and right here at Woodcote as he swings out back onto the pit straight, up to the gearbox, up to 6th gear, and again about 175, 180 miles an hour as he crosses the start-finish line.
Thank you, David. The grid has now been cleared as we get ready for the start of engines here in Britain. Let's go down to John Bisignano for his final bits of information from pit road.
Thank you very much, Bob. It's actually quite a well-formed grid with minimal mechanical problems. McLaren are okay, but they've had a heck of an oil consumption problem all weekend long. Crichton Brown says that it is solved. It took them 2 days to find it, but they say both the gearbox and the engine oil is filled from the same tank, and they have solved the problem. They should be able to go the distance. Lotus, they are using the development engines again for practice, but they have chosen not to use them in the race. No five-valve engines during the race. Ferrari had smoking gearboxes and warm-up like huge cigars. That was also an oil leak problem. They say has been solved. Williams has the development engines in from Renault that they used in France. They were so happy with them. Out there, the empty space where Gugelmin was supposed to be in the March, unfortunately, he will be starting from the very rear of this grid. Some problems for the March team.
Okay, thanks very much, John, and we'll be watching the situation involving Maurizio Gugelmin as we take a quick break. The cars roll off the grid. We'll give you a look at our pick 6. Remember, 2 points if David, John, or I get a driver in his proper position. 1 point if we merely get him in the top 6. We'll be back to Britain. A lonely look at the 2 McLarens leading the front of the field. Poleman Ayrton Senna of Brazil, flanked by his teammate Alain Prost of France. A view from high above the Silverstone circuit, 2.97 miles around. Incredibly fast. In fact, frighteningly so as you watch those cars accelerate through that corner, David.
That Stowe corner, which is as far away from here as you can get, and they're now on the run down to Club. Both these corners in qualifying yesterday. Nigel Mansell convinced us in the papers this morning that he was taking this corner we're just about to see here absolutely flat out at 183 miles an hour. And I tell you, to go through Club at 183 miles an hour takes some very large parts of the anatomy, apart from other things. But now we're in the car of Nakajima as he warms his tyres up, trying to get a bit of warmth in the tyres, although it'll soon come this afternoon. The temperature is up, the sun's out. When the sun's out, it's quite warm today.
The Lotus team, obviously, will be carrying our in-car cameras today. We'll be looking over the shoulder of both Satoru Nakajima and Nelson Piquet, and they have qualified rather well here in Great Britain. Piquet says this is a kind of circuit that he likes to race on. It's wide open, purpose-built, 55 feet wide all the way around the racetrack. Plenty of room to go very, very quickly.
Piquet looked pretty good in warm-up this morning, actually. He went 7th fastest this morning, did a 1:13.8 as opposed to Nigel Mansell's 12.1. Nigel has looked very, very strong all weekend. I'm very convinced that he's going to win this race if the car hangs together. Now we see them slowly. They're now going just out of Abbey up to the new Foster's Bridge, just before the chicane complex. See the sharp left-hand sign on the right there for Nakajima. And they come into here, they'll go down to 2nd gear at this spot just as they go under the bridge. Some drivers go through the gearbox from 6th. They go 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd. Others, like Alain Prost, arrive, do all their braking, and then just stick it into 2nd and accelerate through the corner.
A long look up the front straightaway. To the left, at the front of your picture, is Ayrton Senna. To the right, in the red and white McLaren, is Alain Prost. Senna came up to his starting position very slowly and looking down into his cockpit all the time as he did it. I wonder whether or not he's got a problem. Now there goes the Acela of Nicola Larini onto the pit road. So we've got a problem for Larini, who will pull into his pits. He'll have to start from pit road, assuming they can get the car working right. Remember, Maurizio Gugelmin of Brazil is also starting from the pit road. The back of the field is now coming into position. Emmanuel Pirot is the final starter back at the upper left-hand corner. Now the revs come up and the lights come on. We're away. Good start for Mansell, but also the McLarens.
Mansell made a great start there. He was on the move absolutely instantly, but both McLarens managed to fend him off into turn 1.
Prost to the right of your screen. Senna dives under him for the left to take the lead. So make it 2 McLarens followed by the 2 Ferraris at the beginning of the British Grand Prix.
Always a scramble as they go through Copse on that very first time. It's quite a quick corner. Look how close those McLarens are, but Nigel Mansell hounding them into Beckett's.
Now recall a year ago, this race was run in a driving rainstorm as the field makes its way through. Senna absolutely ran away with the race, although Nigel Mansell in an underpowered Williams came from mid-pack in a storming finish for 2nd. So we expect to see both Senna and Mansell on top form here today.
Plenty Matthew Sparks coming from underneath those Ferraris. Ride height down to an absolute minimum. About 190 miles an hour as they go into these two corners right on the deck. No ground clearance at all.
Ayrton Senna is your leader, followed by Alain Prost. Looks like Nigel Mansell in third position. Gerhard Berger, by the way, has announced, as we expected, that he will replace Alain Prost with the McLaren team next year. There you see Prost to the right in the number 2 car, pressed by Nigel Mansell. Let's go down to John.
Well, that very quick stop by the Osella team was because Amir had fallen off on the first lap of warm-up around to the final grid. They made a very quick stop, replaced the mirror, and hopefully he's going to be using it because everyone is headed his way.
Down the front straightaway they come towards you. There is Nigel Mansell, the object of so much affection here in Great Britain. 10 years ago, the Williams team won their very first Formula One Grand Prix race here. Last year, Nigel Mansell had a spectacular performance to second, as I mentioned. He has also won here. In fact, his first victory came in a British race, so he is very much the favorite of the British fans.
Alessandro Nannini there in the new Benetton Ford combination going very well. And look at Prost giving his teammate Ayrton Senna a very close run. And another guy who's really going to be wanting to do well today is Gerhard Berger in the second of those Ferraris. He's been wanting to prove all year that he really is quick. Look at the road there that Alain Prost is using up.
Now, those rumble strips are very rough, too. We watched some of these support races come through here, and the cars just set up in a tremendous clatter as they go over those rumble strips, so that's not doing good things for the suspensions of these cars.
Well, they're not very big bumps, but they certainly do make a tremendous row, especially when you're in a Group C car where the thing's enclosed in
as you watch
a guitar.
Nigel Mansell, you make your top 10. Senna, Prost, Mansell, Berger, Boutsen and Patrese in the Williams, Nannini in the new Benetton Ford, Martin Brundle moving up well, followed by Pierluigi Martini and Nelson Piquet.
Both the Renault Williams cars went incredibly well on Friday morning for the very first practice, and they seem to have got slower and slower as the weekend's gone on, and Thierry Boutsen was not very happy with the performance of his car this morning in warm-up, but he seems to be doing okay this afternoon. But they started off, and Patrese was the fastest car here most of the morning on Friday, and in fact for most of the first qualifying session. Nannini now catching up with both of those Renault cars, Renault-engined Williams.
Recall last week in France, Nannini did such a tremendous job with the new Ford-powered Benetton until the left rear suspension broke and threw him off of the race course. There is Gerhard Berger, the 29-year-old Austrian, headed for McLaren next year and looking for a good finish for Ferrari right now. The rumor in the pit lane is that Berger turned down more money to stay at Ferrari that he's going to be paid from McLaren. Still, his estimated paycheck somewhere in the area of $6 to $8 million in 1990.
And that's just for the year. That's not a long-term deal. That's just for 1 year.
So, 2 McLarens up front, followed by 2 Ferraris, and then the 2 Williams cars. Terry Boutsen leading teammate Riccardo Patrese. There is Nannini, one of the Minardi's, and it looks like Piquet in the Lotus.
And very closely followed by Ivan Capelli. A bit of shuffling going on there. Those were the both the Tyrrell cars were involved in that little shuffle as they went under the bridge.
Michele Alboreto will not be back with Tyrrell this year. That announcement also made this weekend in England. Jean Alesi, the young Frenchman who finished 4th last week in France, will replace Alboreto on the Tyrrell team. The Osella is off. We'll be back to England in a moment. Gerhard Berger is in the pits. There you see the Ferrari parked, and Berger sits forlornly just a couple of laps into this British Grand Prix. Ayrton Senna is your leader. Alain Prost is second, and you can see the gap back to Nigel Mansell in the other Ferrari running third, followed by Boutsen, Patrese, both in the Williams, Alessandro Nannini with the Benetton, Nelson Piquet, Martini, Capelli, and Alliot.
And I must say, I'm a bit surprised at the way the McLarens are pulling away from Nigel. He has been so strong all weekend, but look how Minardi there, Martini is being hounded by Ivan Capelli in that Leighton House March. The Leighton House Marches that promised so much last year, and there he whistles round the inside of him going up through Abbey. That was a pretty stout move.
Let's go down to John Bizignano and find out about Capelli's teammate.
Well, Gugelmin, Capelli's teammate, had a crack in the water reservoir right here. This car is his race car. It has run perfectly all day Friday, all day Saturday. Even in warm-up on Sunday, they do the 1 warm-up lap. A crack develops in the reservoir, and now he is in a spare car that he hasn't been in all weekend long. Somewhat of an uncomfortable position for the young Brazilian driver.
And that young Brazilian now runs in 21st position. You saw Luis Sala of Spain pull his Minardi onto the pit lane. We've got action all around the racetrack here in the early running of the British Grand Prix.
And there we just saw Jonathan Palmer in one of the Tyrrells, the number 3 car, very closely following Derek Warwick in the, there we see them again, going through Beckett's by the look of things. Swinging through Chapel Curve now onto the long downhill back straight. Hanger straight, got a bit of wind behind them today.
We saw a car pull off just before we went to commercial. I identified it tentatively as the Osella of Nicola Larini, but Larini is still circulating on the racetrack. We'll let you know who that is as soon as we can find out. Derek Warwick in the white car all the way off the racetrack there.
Using a lot of racetrack.
The leaders come by our announced position. It is Senna, followed by Prost and Mansell as we watch Derek Warwick making his way around. Remember, Eddie Cheever did not make the field for this race. There's one of the Minardis, followed by the number 7 Brabham, and one of the Lotuses.
7 car, of course, is Martin Brundle, one of the other English drivers in this race, but his teammate Stefano Modena rather outshone him all weekend in pre-qualifying, in practice and qualifying, and this morning. So Martin Brundle's got a lot to show his home crowd here.
There is Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell, whom Ken Tyrrell at 65 years of age is so proud of. The young Frenchman who ran as high as 2nd in the Grand Prix of France last week, but is now running well back in the field. 12th, we make him at this point in the British GP. There is the trio up front. Now you're inside Satoru Nakajima's car as he trails Englishman Martin Brundle. Listen to the sound of this V8.
Both Stowe and Club, but I think he probably went in just a fraction too fast, and in both cases Martin Brundle was able to pull away from him once they got into the corner. It's one of those things that's very easy to do when you're following a driver. You want to catch up on him on the brakes, but of course if you can't turn in and get on the power quick enough, you lose more ground than you pick up.
Back up front, once again, the Ayrton Senna in the front of your picture, followed by Alain Prost, and there is Nigel Mansell, who brings this crowd of some 180,000 people to its feet every time he goes by.
A tremendous amount of crowd appreciation here. There we see his teammate, Gerhard Berger.
On pit road once again, I'm sorry, it's coming off pit road, getting back into the race, but Gerhard Berger now hopelessly in arrears. He was the pole man in this race a year ago, not in line for a good afternoon here in Britain.
That was a very, very long stop for Gerhard Berger.
There are the leaders making their way through the very slow Woodcote corner complex of left and right-hand turns. Now this long sweeper onto the front straightaway. There is Senna, your leader. Let's go down to John Visignano in the pit.
Gerhard Berger has just vacated the Ferrari pit. It was quite a long stop, I think at least 2 or 3 laps. It doesn't stop him heart-wise. He'll be trying to catch everyone. They took the top of the scoop that feeds all the air down to the top of the engine. They changed every electrical thing in sight. Black box, all the plugs, everything. When he came by on the second lap, there was a tremendous misfire. They hoped that they cured it by changing everything, but it took a lot of time.
There's a look at Terry Boutsen, winner earlier this year in a rainy race in Canada. His first Formula One win, and it broke up victories by these 3 men, plus Gerhard Berger and Nelson Piquet, known as the top 5 in Formula One racing. They had won virtually 54 of the last 55 races until Terry Boutsen triumphed in Canada. There is Nigel Mansell going by in the 12-cylinder Ferrari with that tricky, electrically actuated 7-speed transmission. And he is pulling up very close to Alain Prost at this point, David.
He's certainly gained a lot of ground on. Prost seems to have lost a bit of ground, too, to his teammate, Ayrton Senna, who he was hanging on to at the beginning. It makes you wonder if maybe Prost has a little problem of some sort. They've had a lot of problems this weekend, and although they told John in pit lane before the race that they had got rid of these problems, obviously that remains to be seen. I think that Nigel's feeling more confident today than he's felt for a long time, that these cars in front of him won't be there at the end. Something actually out of the side of Nigel's cockpit on his right. It's coming over his right shoulder. I can't quite see what it is. It almost looks like a seatbelt.
I think it might be the wire off the radio connection on his helmet. One of the other cars, the Minardi of Luis Sala, has been doing the same thing all weekend, except he has a loop about a foot long that's been flapping outside of the cockpit. Mansell's a little bit shorter than that, and you can see by the gap behind Mansell to the fourth-place car of Terry Boutsen right there that the top three have pulled away to a huge lead.
I'm sure that this is upsetting for the Renault Williams people because, as I said, they were so strong on Friday, and the first qualifying and the first practice, I think they thought they were in with a really good chance here.
There is Nelson Piquet, the three-time world champion, of whom so much has been said this year about his commitment and about his motivation. Right now, Piquet runs 7th, as the top 5 are Senna, Prost, Mansell, Boutsen, and Patrese. We'll be right back.
Football player? Oh, a soccer player. That's different. I don't know. Farmer. I like farmer.
I'd be a golfer or a pilot, one of the two. Or a car salesman, I'm not sure.
Probably be a businessman. Anything that I can deal with a lot of money.
Walking out, playing for England at Wembley in the World Cup would just be heaven.
I was studying architecture and economy and commerce.
Very easy. I would have liked to be a golf player.
I don't know. I like to have 100 lives and do 100 different things, but no, I enjoy very much racing.
And if you'd like to ask a driver a question at a future race, there is the address. Meanwhile, we have Ayrton Senna off the racetrack and buried in the pea gravel.
Well, that's a sight you don't very often see. We'll have to wait for the replay to know what happened to Ayrton Senna there. Here we see it coming up.
He's at the front of your picture to the right. Watch as Ayrton Senna loses it.
Just absolutely looped it, and that was at Beckett's corner, I'm pretty sure, as he came in. Yeah, Beckett's corner.
And that makes the 4th race in a row that Ayrton Senna of Brazil will not finish.
Not doing his World Championship hopes much good at all. Looking very, very sanguine about the whole thing. Not looking distressed. Similar circumstances at this stage, I would be.
Well, as good a driver as he is, I think the first thing he would say at that point is that I made a mistake. I lost control of the car.
It did go around so quickly, you know, one has to wonder, in fact, if there was something a bit wrong with the car. But that will be a great fillet for Nigel Mansell. There's a little smile on the lips of Ayrton Senna as he watched his teammate Nigel Mansell go by him there. He's just at it on the exit of Beckett's. It went round so quickly, you have to wonder whether there was not a fairly large patch of oil in front of him, and of course him going around gave the others that vital bit of warning, or if one of his tires was going down. It didn't look like it, but you never know.
And here's another look. Watch the car to the right of your screen as under braking into that corner, or perhaps under acceleration, Ayrton Senna just lost it.
Yep, just got away from him. The tires look as if they're all up, but we can't tell at this stage whether something did in fact break. It certainly went round awfully quickly.
I cannot remember the last time we saw Ayrton Senna spin. Meanwhile, that makes this man your leader, Alain Prost, followed by Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari, Terry Boutsen and Riccardo Patrese in the Williams, Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton, and Nelson Piquet in the Lotus. Coming in, the points stood as follows. Alain Prost leading with 38 off his victory in France last week. Ayrton Senna second with 27, but not having scored in 3 straight races, as we mentioned. Riccardo Patrese is third with 22, Mansell fourth with 15, Terry Boutsen fifth with 13. But now, for the 4th straight race, Senna will not score points. Riccardo Patrese can actually overtake him in the points with a good finish today. The drivers score points on the basis of 9, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. Only the top 6 cars will score.
Well, there we see Martin Brundle in the pits in the Brabham. The Brabham, of course, on Pirelli tyres. Most of your front runners on Goodyear, but the Pirellis, of course, are getting better and better, and they seem to work very well in cool weather. Of course, unfortunately for them, we're in the middle of summer, and it's not often very cool, especially here today and last week in particular in the south of France. Nigel Mansell still pressing very strongly onto Alain Prost, trying to press him into a mistake. Not the sort of thing that Alain Prost does a lot of, making mistakes, but then nor does Ayrton Senna either.
There is Ayrton Ayrton Senna, who joins Roberto Moreno on the sidelines. It was Moreno's Coloni that parked just before an earlier commercial break. And this man is now your leader, Alain Prost, who many thought was perhaps being eclipsed by the brilliance of his teammate Ayrton Senna, the 1988 world champion. Instead, Prost seems to have a new lease on life, coming off a victory in France, and he is shooting for his third career world championship.
And of course, what will be his 38th win. An absolutely incredible total. Next man on the totem pole would be Jackie Stewart with 27 wins, to give you some idea of the dominant way that Alain Prost over the last decade has handled Formula One.
That was Andrea De Cesaris and the Dallara giving plenty of room to Alain Prost and Nigel Mansell battling for the lead here in Britain.
His teammate Alex Caffey, of course, that is Andrea De Cesaris' teammate in the other Dallara, did not make the cut on that vital Friday morning pre-qualifying. Just got aced out. Must be very disappointing for a man who's already got 4 points towards this year's World Championship.
Great battle up front. Alain Prost of France. Alain Marie Pascal Prost, about whom so much has been written over the years. Trained as a woodcarver, wanted to be a cabinet maker when he was very young. At the age of 12, spent about $100, bought himself a cart to go racing, won the championship, was picked up as a professional the following year, and as he sometimes likes to boast, he has never paid for a ride since that first cart that he bought for about $100 back as a teenager in France.
I could say he'd never looked back either. Actually putting a little bit of daylight between himself and Mansell. It'll be interesting to see when these two really get into the thick of lap traffic, who handles that best. And the absolute ace at that, of course, is now out of the race. Ayrton Senna being the pass master at getting through traffic. Absolutely incredible in traffic. But look at the gap between Nigel Mansell and third place car now.
15 seconds from Mansell back to Terry Boutsen running in third. That is not Boutsen there at the middle of your screen. That is Nicola Larini. There is Terry Boutsen, and look at this battle for third place. Boutsen, his teammate Patrese, and right behind Patrese is the green car of Alessandro Nannini, right there in the middle of your screen. Behind Nannini is Piquet, and behind him, the march of Ivan Capelli. Now Capelli not in the picture, so it's Piquet bringing up the rear right now. This is a battle for third place.
A lot, and there we see Andrea De Cesaris coming
in the Dallara, moving slowly with good reason. Something broken on that car. Canadian winner Boutsen, chased by his teammate Patrese, who looks like he's ready to try a pass, and he makes it.
Patrese making a good job of that pass there. Thierry not getting desperate and trying to block him off too much. We saw some pretty hairy racing there this morning. Capelli slows down.
Oh, tough break. Ivan Capelli in the marches that everyone expected to do so well here. And now Terry Boutsen all over the back of his teammate Riccardo Patrese. Williams against Williams for third place. Now, these are V10 powered machines. That extra couple of cylinders should make such a difference over the V8 as we take a look at pit action there on Larini's Osella. They should be able to run away from a V8 powered machine such as Alessandro Nannini's. But Nannini's is a brand new power plant made by Ford. There's Gugelmin pulling off the racetrack.
No, that's Capelli.
Oh, is that? I'm sorry, Capelli.
So he's obviously a long way from pits. It was difficult to tell on that slowing down picture where he was. Here we go back to our third, fourth, and fifth place cars. They come into Stowe. And there's one of the LaRousse Lolas there. Ooh, smoking badly too. That Lamborghini engine smoking a bit this afternoon.
My point is we have two V10s being chased by two state-of-the-art V8s. A battle of the hardware here in the Grand Prix of Great Britain, and we'll be back after these messages. Coming up later today here on ESPN, from horsepower, we go to horse racing from Ruidoso Downs in New Mexico at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. The world's fastest 2-year-olds going all out in the Rainbow Futurity, second jewel in the Triple Crown of quarter horse racing. A distance of 350 yards for a $600,000 purse. Chris Lincoln and Charles E. Canty will be providing the coverage of the action. And don't forget, later on, ESPN will also present coverage of the All-American Futurity, last leg of the Triple Crown, and the All-American Derby, last leg of the Triple Crown for 3-year-olds, completing ESPN's coverage of quarter horse racing's Big Four. So don't forget, this afternoon, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, the Rainbow Futurity from Ruidoso Downs in New Mexico. And a little bit earlier, before Ayrton Senna went out, we tried to tell you where you can send questions for the Formula One drivers to Ask the Driver at P.O. Box 309, Crestwood, Kentucky, 40014. We'll gather your questions, ask them the drivers, and give you their answers. Here is the car of Nelson Piquet running at the back of a great battle for third place. There is your leader in the center of your screen, Alain Prost of France, who has opened up a quick second and a half over this man, Nigel Mansell, the darling of the crowd here in the British Grand Prix.
Well, one of the other British drivers, Jonathan Palmer in the Tyrrell, is about to be lapped by this man here, Alain Prost, and of course this one, Nigel Mansell. He was just in front of them at that last picture we saw coming out of Stowe. Poor old Jonathan Palmer, another man that's going to have to look to his laurels, because John Alesi, who's driving a Tyrrell and a Formula One car for only the second time in his life, is now lying a solid 8th.
A big accident for Riccardo Patrese. Oh, he has taken he's taken the front right corner off. The wing is all askew.
That was a pretty heavy crash somewhere. We're not quite sure where yet. Gosh, no, he must be pretty mad. Oh, he's okay.
Oh, I'm okay. At 2.97 miles, the car is building up enormous speeds here. We saw speeds of up to 197 miles an hour in practice. Riccardo Patrese has obviously had a big one here.
Well, one of the things, of course, that makes this track so fast is very wide, and it's also very flat. It's one of the nicest tracks to drive on in terms of bumps, and so you can really get up some tremendous speeds through these corners, or rather maintain the speed that you build up. He obviously doesn't know what happened, and I'm sure that we'll see a replay. It's certainly, here we go.
Here it comes. Watch the right of your screen as Patrese enters the corner and just loops it.
Very lucky to see the speed at which those marshals got off the mark. That was down at Stowe, the fastest corner here on the racetrack. At the end of Hanger Straight, just turns in. No, that's Club. I'm sorry, Club, the second fastest corner here.
And very nearly getting airborne. In fact, he got all four wheels off the ground. That looks a lot like Nigel Mansell's accident in Japan a couple of years ago, also in a Williams. And there is Riccardo Patrese in his 184th Grand Prix, the all-time leader in starts. And there is Frank Williams, injured in an automobile accident a couple of seasons ago, the man behind the Williams Grand Prix engineering team. Tough break for Patrese, who in his last 4 races has 3 second-place finishes and a third, a strong third in points. Let's get more now from pit road.
We have the brand new Benetton, only 2 races on this car for Alessandro Nannini. It's the car with the new Ford. Brakes are smoking tremendously down here. It almost looks like a routine tire stop. I see no problems with the motor, no problems with suspension adjustments whatsoever. Nannini has made a routine stop very early here in the British Grand Prix.
Well, now that is pretty interesting, because all these cars are using the C-compound rubber provided by Goodyear. That was all the Goodyear runners, and they were all convinced they could go to this race without any stops. The only suspect tire would be the left front, which is the one that takes the real caning around this circuit, and that's interesting. If he's had to stop that soon in the Benetton, I noticed that the right front on Prost's car has some slightly odd markings on it. It'll be interesting to see if, in fact, everybody ends up making a pit stop in this race. Depends a little bit on the sunshine, I'm sure.
You're watching your leader, Alain Prost, making his way through traffic. Olivier Griard is ahead of him in the blue Ligier. Here is your order. Prost, followed by Mansell. You're inside Nelson Piquet's car now as he follows Terry Boutsen. Boutsen in third, Piquet in fourth. Behind them, Sandro Nannini, who just made the pit stop while in 5th position, will drop back a bit, perhaps. Philippe Alliot runs 6th, Jean Alesi 7th, 8th is Maurizio Gugelmin, who has come all the way from the back of this field. Stefano Modena is 9th, Satoru Nakajima 10th, followed by Louis Sala, Derek Warwick, Olivier Griard, Pierluigi Martini, Emmanuel Pirot, Jonathan Palmer, Bertrand Gachot, Eric Bernard, and Martin Brundle.
Makes you wonder if maybe Thierry Boutsen, it doesn't look like it from this shot, is going to be holding Nelson Piquet up just a little bit, because there's no doubt about it that once Patrese got round Boutsen, he pulled away very handily, and Nannini pulled right up on Thierry Boutsen, and I think it would have been only a matter of time before Nannini had put Boutsen away as well. It'd be interesting to see if Piquet can manage to stay right with him.
There's a look at Nigel Mansell. Meanwhile, more on the tire story from John Visignano.
Lee Gogg, the managing director of Goodyear Motorsports for international competition, that is. Leroy, you told me that we weren't going to see any tire changes down here today, and that it was going to be boring as far as my job. What happened?
Well, I told you we didn't expect any, and if we had some, I didn't want to be around. Apparently, the front tires, he went to understeer, and he's graining the front tires. He's losing grip on them. Part of that, we don't know yet. We're we're checking the air pressure, but part of it is if they follow a car be in front of them very close, they lose their downforce, lose their grip, start sliding sideways, and then he starts graining up the left front. We think this may happen, or we'll check the air pressure. We'll see.
So a combination of aerodynamics and graining.
Yes, but it just makes the front get worse and worse and worse, so he come in and try a new set.
So for the rest of the race, it might be boring, but this Benetton car did give us a little bit of excitement.
Well, we're sure seeing nose-to-tail action if the turbulence behind these cars is what's causing the problem. There is Nigel Mansell leading a pack. There is Nelson Piquet, who is right up now on Terry Boutsen's gearbox. Once again, this is a V8 overtaking a V10 engine, and that should not happen here on a great big power circuit like Silverstone.
Caution flag still showing down at Club Corner there. And look at Nelson Piquet. He's all over Thierry Boutsen. Will be very, very anxious to get past, but I'm sure that Boutsen does have just a... No, here he goes down under the bridge. Great shot from inside.
Nelson Piquet, the three-time world champion. A lot of folks think that he was just getting tired of this and he just didn't have the motivation to drive like a world champion. But today, Piquet really has a head of steam up.
Well, he went very well. You can see there that extra power of that V10 helps coming off that corner. On the other hand, Piquet got him at the end of the second fastest straight here going into the chicane. I think maybe Thierry Boutsen is just down a little bit on the old GG side on his engine, possibly.
And quickly, Piquet opens up a big gap over Terry Boutsen. Make your order. Alain Prost, Nigel Mansell, Nelson Piquet third, Terry Boutsen fourth, Philippe Alliot all the way up in fifth position with that 12-cylinder Lola Lamborghini.
Days when David Hobbs was racing Formula One cars, team management had to rely on driver feedback to find out how to set up a car for a particular circuit. Well, in recent years, they've all received quite a bit of help from something called transducers. Here you see two transducers on the USF&G Aeros cars. This one to measure steering and this one to measure suspension travel. These are very accurate measuring devices that feed information into what is called a data logger. The data logger is on board, and after every practice and qualifying session, it is placed in this box, and then all the information is dumped into a computer where it's analyzed. Here you see every single movement of both suspension and steering around this particular circuit. It is a question in Formula One garages these days, who does set up a Grand Prix car for racing? The driver or the computer?
Track Facts are brought to you by USF&G Asset Management, a network to better manage money, people, property, and equipment. You're looking at pit action at the British Grand Prix, and Nicola Larini, who's had a very long afternoon, back in the pits once again. A new set of Pirellis going on, but the problem may run much deeper than that.
Well, Nicola Larini is already 3 laps down, so I guess at this point he can afford to take his time. There we see Alain Prost still pulling away from Nigel Mansell. There we see Nigel Mansell. The gap now 4.5 seconds, but still there's a long way to go yet.
Let's go down to pit lane, and John.
Hero in his second Grand Prix ever has brought the 1988 Benetton in, again changing 4 tires and nothing else. Lee Gogg told us after our interview with him that those tires were 2 pounds high in the front. Maybe a missed setting to start the race out with. 2 pounds is absolutely disaster to these Grand Prix drivers on these ultra-fast circuits.
And ultra-fast is exactly who this guy is. Nigel Mansell has now set fast lap of the race at 1:12.9 seconds, 146.66 miles an hour. It was just a few years ago that K.K. Rosberg ran the first qualifying lap at just over 150 miles an hour. Mansell has set the race lap very close to that historic mark. There you see him going past our in-car camera, Satoru Nakajima in the Lotus. Your leader is Alain Prost by 4 seconds over Mansell. Nelson Piquet runs in third position, followed by Sandro Nannini, Terry Boutsen, and Mauricio Gugelmin, who, remember, started from pit lane at the back of this 26-car pack. He is now up into 6th position.
And Alessandro Nannini, there we see Thierry Boutsen. Looks like his day is run.
A deathly silence from the back of that Williams with Renault power. It looks like they're going to try and push start him. The car is stalled in the pits, and now they've got it restarted using that air-driven device at the back of the machine. Away he goes, but that will be costly. Meanwhile, back on the racetrack, third car in line in the red and white is Alain Prost, your leader, looking for career victory number 38. 9 cars remain on the lead lap here in Britain. In the background there, you see some of the helicopters. Almost 3,000 takeoffs and landings here today as people are shuttled in and out. And most of those, about 90% in fact, are by helicopter.
And a bit of shuffling went on there as he went past Sala and Modena, and he's now got to dispose of Eric Bernard in the LaRousse Camels, in the LaRousse Lola, the Lamborghini engine.
And there's Nigel Mansell in the red number 27.
Just set fastest lap, but he's now going to be faced with the same traffic that Alain Prost has just wound his way through. Obviously, traffic tends to be a bit of the luck of the draw. If you just catch it at the beginning of the straight, it's great. If you just happen to catch it coming into a bend or a complex of bends, and you know they're a lot slower than you through there, it can be pretty disastrous to the lap time.
Now there's Prost at the front of the train, in between 3 lap cars, then Nigel Mansell.
Nigel's going to catch this lot just as he gets into Stowe, which could be a bit costly for him.
And there is the 3rd place car of Nelson Piquet.
No, that's Nakajima.
I'm sorry, no, that's Nakajima, who he just passed. You're right.
There's Brundle in the number 7.
And look at when you get a chance to see up closely, you can see that there was a lot of oil on the helmets and the windscreens of these cars. There goes one of the Minardi's. Let's go down to John Bizignano.
Terry Boutsen had a misfortune for sure. He was running in 5th place, very strong with that V10 Renault. Came in, left rear tire was punctured. They had to change it very quickly. Actually, they changed all 4. He's out there on fresh rubber all the way around.
And you saw a forlorn-looking Jean Alesi, who was running in 7th position, but spun off the track and stalled the car. He's waiting for help from officials.
John Alesi is one of Eddie Jordan's proteges. Eddie Jordan being an ex-Formula 3 racer who now owns a team, runs a Formula 3 team, a Formula 3000 team. Alesi drives his Formula 3000, which is 1 step below these Formula 1 cars, and he's currently leading the championship, the European Championship, with a win and some other fine placings, which put him at the top of that table. But now things have changed for John Alesi, and he's in Formula 1 and going extremely well.
Let's go down. Ivan Capelli is back in pit road now.
Ivan Capelli, a very short British Grand Prix for you. What went wrong? Not a brilliant start, but anyway, I was with the first 8 cars, and suddenly the transmission's gone. The entire, all gears at once? Yeah, I think really the transmission, because in any gears there was no push on the back. Well, Silverstone's not known to be a hard gearbox track, but it took Ivan Capelli out of the British Grand Prix.
Now there you see a look at the spinning car. That is Alesi, I believe, going off. Yes. Boy, was he lucky. He spun right across in front of traffic.
2 of them were pretty lucky, him and the guy just missed. Sacre bleu, as Ed so as he would say, of course, coming from his hometown.
That'll put a couple of gray hairs on a 25-year-old head. Meanwhile, here's a man with a bit of work ahead of him, Nigel Mansell, running 5 seconds down to a slowly disappearing Alain Prost.
Going around the Lamborghini engine car now, 2 12-cylinders, and I must say these Lamborghini engines sound, ooh, no, Nigel won't like that at all. I don't blame him either.
I believe that is Emmanuel Pirot in front of him, either that or Alio, who is running in 6th position in the race and who is perhaps a bit less inclined to want to let him get by. Let's see if this is another look at what happened to Jean Alesi. Yes, there he is. Now watch where he goes and watch how close the cars behind him get.
That was one of the Brabhams, wasn't it? Martin Brundle or Stefano Modena. Big spin. Stuck on the other side of the road. Meanwhile, Alain Prost weaves his way through traffic. Goes through Copse Corner one more time. Now on his 33rd lap. Whistles around Maggot's curve. Hard on the brakes. And he comes into Beckett's down to 3rd. He's a proponent of the one downshift school. Every corner he comes to, he just brakes, gets right to the corner, and shifts into the gear he wants, whether it's 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and he goes straight there from the gear that he was in before. Obviously here, most of the time you're in 6th.
There's the red car of Nigel Mansell running in 2nd position, and fairly comfortably now. He has a gap of some 46 40 seconds over Nelson Piquet in third. Sandro Nannini another 16 seconds adrift in fourth. Mauricio Gugelmin, who started from the pit lane, just 2 seconds behind Nannini in fifth position. And then the lapped car of Filipe Alliot running sixth. Alliot, remember, is on the verge of being fired by the Lamborghini team. His teammate, or former teammate, Yannick Dalmas, was fired before last weekend's French Grand Prix. Dalmas came here to Britain driving for the AGS team, but failed to make it out of pre-qualifying into the general field. There is Nigel Mansell running right now 8.8 seconds behind leader Alain Prost. We'll be back for more of the British Grand Prix from Silverstone after these important messages. History is everywhere. Here in England, you're looking up from North End Manor, built in 1546, a regular stop by the former Duke of Windsor, that is the late Duke of Windsor, Edward VII, who abdicated in favor of divorcee Wallace Simpson, and was once lived in by Mike Parks, famous racing driver. You're watching Alain Prost, whose teammate Ayrton Senna, the defending world champion and the defending winner of this British Grand Prix, dropped out of the race when he spun the car off the racetrack and buried it in the gravel on about the 11th lap of the 65 in this race. Since then, this man, Alain Prost, has led. He is a strong leader for his third career world championship. And there is Dr. Jonathan Palmer of the Tyrrell team, who had a massive nose into the tires just a few moments ago. But obviously, he is nothing more than perhaps a bit shaken after a big impact.
Gave himself a quick IV, a quick check over, and setting off on a long walk back to the pits. One of the worst walks in the world. That thing still flapping out of Nigel Mansell's right shoulder. You're probably right. It's a cable of some sort.
Nigel Mansell circulating in second position. We're getting our pictures from our friends with the BBC, who suffered a certain amount of intensity and perhaps tension over the weekend when a short labor stoppage ensued on Thursday night. However, the technicians and cameramen are back on duty today, and we're getting some terrific pictures of this British Grand Prix for you. Alain Prost is your leader, Nigel Mansell second, Nelson Piquet third, 42 seconds behind Mansell. Sandro Nannini runs in the
wheel there, like, just see that wheel that he just missed.
That might be one of Palmer's.
Probably one of Palmer's, but you'd think somebody would have moved it by now. I mean, it's right on the edge of those bump strips.
I saw no yellow flag.
That'll get your attention. You come whistling around there and using up all the road you normally use, there's suddenly a wheel part there. A wheel nuisance, I'd call that.
A loose wheel, yes.
Really inconvenient.
Wheelie. And Mansell is just the guy to get his car out there on the dirty stuff, doing a little agricultural racing, as John Bizignano would say, to get very close to that wheel. There you see up at the front lane, top left and right hand corners of his wing, you get a little bit of a sense of the vortex downforce, so much a part of modern Formula One technology.
Well, it is fairly heavy here today, as England is inclined to be a little bit on the humid side. And this morning, there's poor old Ivan Capelli looking disgallantly at his TV monitor screen, no doubt. But the air this morning was very heavy during warm-up, and there were some tremendous vapor trails being left by these massive Formula One wings. Alain Prost about to lap Mauricio Gugelmin, who's lying in fifth spot. An incredible comeback, considering he started dead last from the pit lane.
And we've had an awful lot of attrition. We are down to 16 cars of the original 26 still in this race, and we are only but 35 laps in. Not quite. Well, we've just passed halfway, correcting myself there. And we have lost 10 cars thus far. But right now, going like a clock, as he did 1 week ago at Le Castellet in France, Alain Prost.
And this is not generally a high attrition track. Gear shifting is at a bit of a minimum here. They only make, well, Alain Prost only makes about 16 shifts. Everybody who changes down through the gearbox makes about 25, but it's not a real high number of shifts per lap. It's smooth, it's not tough on the cars that way, but of course it does generate tremendous side load, because all these corners, even Beckett's the one we've just been looking at there, and particularly the curves like Chapel, Abbey and Maggotts do generate tremendous side loads on these cars. A very good example just coming up Stowe, as he comes into Stowe, going through here at about 145, 155 miles an hour. puts a lot of side load on uprights, bearings, suspension parts, pickup points, and tires, of course.
That high shot gave you a good feeling for the sheer speed here. Enormous speeds, up to 200 miles an hour with the wind at their back going down the hangar straightaway, as Alain Prost just was. This man, Nigel Mansell, giving it his all, running in second position. Second a week ago in France. Of course, a great season opening victory in Rio. So Nigel Mansell having a good first season for the Ferrari team, and yet to find out who his teammate will be in 1990. Gerhard Berger, as we've already said, plans to move to McLaren next year to take Prost's seat. And a group of young Italians, including Ivan Capelli, Nicola Larini, Riccardo Patrese, and Alex Caffey, are said to be the short list for Berger's seat.
Well, Riccardo Patrese has certainly shown a lot of form this year. Everybody thought that Thierry Boutsen would be quicker than him in the Williams cars, and in fact, most of the time, Riccardo Patrese has in fact been quicker than Boutsen, which must be a bit of a shock, apart from anybody else, to Boutsen himself. There we see number 12, that's Nakajima, the Japanese driver, driving the Lotus Judd, not with the 5-valve Tickford heads here. Apparently it gave them about another 3 miles an hour down the straight, but they were just a little bit worried about the reliability of it. And certainly with the 4-valve heads, Nelson Piquet is doing a heck of a job running in third spot. Bit of goop on the lens there. There seems to be a lot of oil flying around this afternoon. The in-car cameras of both cars have, we could see the oil on Nelson Piquet's head just a few minutes ago, where it's run around the back of his helmet. And we saw that Brundle on a pit stop had a lot of oil on him. So somebody's, you can see the oil on the top of Brundle's helmet. You can see the oil on the front.
Inside Piquet's car, you can see the oil nearest the camera on the left side. And look at the windscreen just ahead of him. In fact, to the right of his central windscreen, you can see an extra tab that's been added, perhaps for just this reason, because of all of the debris and oil flying around here at Silverstone.
And also it stops a lot of swirl. You get a lot of swirl in these open seated cars, and at these high-speed circuits like this, it shakes your head about something violently, and it's one of the things they have to work on at places, of course, like Indianapolis in particular.
The sun begins to shine on Nelson Piquet as he heads up toward the club corner and Abbey, and then through the complex at Woodcote, under the bridge, you see right here, running in third position, now 50 seconds down to Nigel Mansell, who in turn is 8.7 seconds down to the leader, Alain Prost. Coming up behind Bertrand Gachot, if I'm not mistaken. Gachot had an enormous crash in the morning warm-up and is now in his backup Onyx. Another team that plans to replace a driver at the end of the year, Gachot and teammate Stefan Johansson, who did not qualify for this race, each wondering if they will be back next year. Here's a man who will be. Another Englishman, Martin Brundle, in the number 7 Brabham. His teammate, Stefano Modena, is already out of the race. Brundle running in 15th position, so not having a very good race. 2 laps down. There you see Olivier Grillard's Blue Ligier.
Martin Brundle only just made this race. He did a 1 minute 12 second flat. Poor old Stefan Johansson in the other Onyx did a 1 minute 12.02. It's just 0.02 of a second behind Martin, and that meant he couldn't even take part in any of the practice and qualifying. That pre-qualifying, as I said last week, is a pretty grim business.
Let's go down to pit lane for a mechanical trip from John.
John Judd, the designer and maintainer of the Lotus Judd engine at the moment. You must be quite proud with Piquet in third place.
Well, I'm quite happy at the moment, but obviously it could be short term.
Now, this is not the 5-valve engine. Why did you not go with the 5-valve and use the old 4-valve?
Well, that's really Lotus' decision, but they ran the 5-valve on Friday, and they had a problem with the valve gear, the camshaft drive. So, on the grounds of reliability, we decided to race the 4-valve.
How many horsepower are you down on the Hondas?
I would think about 60.
Will you find it soon?
Sorry, I didn't catch you.
Will you find those 60 horsepower before the end of the season?
I would think not with an 8-cylinder, no.
John Judd with his fingers crossed here down in the Lotus pits.
And he also won't find those horsepower if he spends much more time where we saw him last night. Mr. Barsha and I saw him in the Butcher's Arms with Pete Wiseman, of course, who makes so many of the gearboxes for these Formula One cars.
And so I gather from that we may see more than 8 cylinders in the future for Judd engine. There is Ayrton Senna, the defending winner of this race, who doesn't want to talk to anyone. He is done for the day. His teammate Alain Prost leads, and we'll be right back. The second half of the 1989 Formula One season will begin at the Hockenheim Ring in West Germany, and it'll be coming to you here on ESPN Sunday, July 30th at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. The Grand Prix of Germany, Sunday at noon Eastern here on ESPN, battling through the woods at Hockenheim, one of the most beautiful circuits in all of Formula One. Here in Great Britain, there you see the car of Nigel Mansell, not making tremendous speed, it looks like. I hope everything's all right on the Ferrari. Does not appear to be going as quickly as he was before.
He didn't use all the road going through that corner. It looks very ominously to me as if he slowed up.
I think the right front tire, the left on your screen as we look at him,
is flat.
Is flat, yes.
Yeah, it is.
It's about to come off the car. Oh, what a tough break for Nigel Mansell. He's getting very close to the pit entrance, but he still has a long way to go, and he is losing enormous amounts of time to first place Alain Prost. He was 9 seconds down and slowly slipping further behind, but his right front, not his left front, which we expected would be giving the problems today, David.
Well, he must have run over some debris. There's a lot of stuff out on the track today and caused a puncture. Thierry Bootson's had a puncture. Now Nigel's had a puncture. They're pretty unusual, really, in Formula One. Usually it's a case of blistering, and of course he wouldn't blister that tire.
Nigel Mansell has just made it back into the Ferrari pit. A very slow trip off the track and a very fast Ferrari pit stop. There's no other problems with the car. That left front was definitely down. Nigel Mansell returning to competition at the British Grand Prix.
Now we'll see what Nigel Mansell is famous for, a charge. He is still in second position by my unofficial reckoning, but Nelson Piquet is going to draw much, much closer. Meanwhile, Alain Prost pulls out an enormous lead now, perhaps an indomitable one. You see Nigel Mansell just coming up to speed as Alain Prost crosses the start-finish line.
But will we, in fact, see a replay of the 87 Grand Prix when Nigel Mansell elected to change tires on his Williams Honda? Nelson Piquet did not, and on the last but one lap, because he had got new tires, Nigel Mansell was able to wind Nelson Piquet in, whose tires were going off and off and off and off, and passed him with 2 laps to go and won the 87 race. Now, the big question is Prost going to stay out on his tires, and will they too start to go off to the extent that he can no longer hold Nigel off, who will have new tires?
Well, right now he is about 31 seconds down, is this man, Nigel Mansell, to Alain Prost, which certainly gives Prost time to get in and get out, but not too much time. You figure slowing down and speeding up, in addition to a 7 or 8 second pit stop, means it's probably going to take about 20 to 25 seconds to make the tire change for Prost, should he need it. And that would allow Nigel Mansell to get very close.
Nigel, in these sort of situations, just seems to do so well. He is a real charger, there's no doubt about it. And he's great in traffic. Pushes and pushes and pushes. And the Ferrari does not seem to be very short on horsepower, even though the Honda's probably got just a slight edge, but not much of one.
As we watch action elsewhere on the racetrack, let's get more on the tires from John Bisignano.
Nigel Mansell's tire was totally disintegrated by the time he got to the pits, but that wasn't the reason why it went down. There was a huge cut right in dead center of the non-tread or the slick tire, the race tire. He lost air pressure instantaneously. He was very lucky that he did not lose the entire car.
And our Longines Olivetti timing system has now updated the gap between the front runners, make Nigel Mansell 54 seconds down to Alain Prost. So with the McLaren team behind him in the pits, even if he has to stop, Prost should have no problem holding on to the lead. But Nelson Piquet is but 9 seconds behind Mansell now, once again on worn tires. We'll have to see whether or not he plans to go the entire distance as well.
Prost stamping this race with horrendous authority as he's about to lap Alessandro Nannini, who of course is in 4th spot.
While we're away in commercial, Philippe Alliot pitted very, very slowly. He has not rejoined the field to this point. He is now shown as 5 laps down. Tough break for Alliot, who drove so well under pressure of being fired at France. Same situation this weekend. He was running up in 6th position, potential points-paying position, but it is not going to work for Alliot this weekend. Your top 5, Alain Prost, Nigel Mansell, Nelson Piquet, Sandro Nannini, Maurizio Gugelmin. The next 5, Martini, Sala, Grillard, Nakajima, and Derek Warwick in the arrows, all of them a lap down.
Alain Prost at this stage of the game must be saying to himself now, did those lads fix that gearbox or didn't they?
gearbox, very much the technical story in Formula One this year. Instead of a longitudinal box protruding straight off the back of the engine, they're going for space-saving transverse gearboxes moving across the line of the power drive. As a result, much more compact chassis, but McLaren in particular have had trouble with theirs.
They have a more compact chassis. Of course, it gets the weight near the middle of the car. They're very easy to work on. They're quite a difficult thing to construct, and it allows them to have better aerodynamics and a whole range of things.
Alain Prost has entered the pit lane. Here comes Alain Prost. John will be waiting for him as he makes his stop. We'll see how quickly Nigel Mansell can close the gap. Here comes Alain Prost. Let's go down to John Visignano.
The perfect boys of McLaren are swarming around Alain Prost cars. He says, wipe my visor. There's so much oil on this circuit. I can't see where I'm going. All four are off. New one's on. Left front's a little bit of a problem. RPMs, he's got a problem in the pits. He almost threw a valve all the way through. He's got problems with the right rear. He spun the tires trying to get out of the pits before the right rear was on the ground. He'll try it again a little bit more successfully. David Hobbs, at the beginning of this race, when I told you everyone was going out on C's, no pit stops planned, you said the left fronts won't last. I think you were very right, sir.
Well, it's a bit warmer, I think, than they thought it was going to be. And the gap now down to Nigel Mansell. Nigel Mansell there.
We'll have to wait till they come around to get an accurate time, but I suspect it is going to be something on the order of 8 seconds, once again separating Nigel Mansell from Alain Prost. As we watch Mansell circulating, we'll let you know. We're going to take a quick time out and return to the British Grand Prix after this.
I have maybe a good series of results and I use a pair of gloves. I keep always the same glove.
I have St. Christopher, which was given to me years ago by my mother, and that never leaves me.
The only thing that I'm doing is going into the car from the left side.
All last year I didn't wear my St. Christopher charm and I won the World Championship. I didn't wear it all this year so far until I non-pre-qualified a couple of times with some problems, and on it went again.
Just I say in the heart, please, good luck. Just.
And you know, the odd thing about talking with all of these drivers is that they say, no, I'm not superstitious, but I do this. Ask the driver. There is the address. We'll ask your questions to the Formula One crews. Right now, Alain Prost is your leader, running in second position. This man in the number 27 Scarlet Ferrari, Nigel Mansell, 12 seconds down to the leader, but both of the first and second place cars are on fresh tires, so they very much have a level playing ground here at the British Grand Prix.
Well, it won't be a replay of 87, of course.
Well, we don't know that quite yet, David. Your leader is Prost, followed by Mansell, Piquet, Nannini with a very rough-sounding Ford at this point. Sounds like he may have broken an exhaust header or something. Mauricio Gugelmin has come from 26th to 5th place. And in 6th, the final points-paying position, Pierluigi Martini, driving in one of the minorities. Now, the significance of that for Martini is that would put them in the running to get out of pre-qualifying. But 1 point alone won't do it, because so many teams, 14 to this date, have scored points this year. When this race is over, the first half of the season will be complete, and the teams that will get bumped down to the pre-qualifying session on Friday morning will be renewed. There'll be a whole new roster, and you have to score points to get out of the pre-qualifying dungeon.
Nigel Mansell really putting on the pressure here, using all that bump strip on the outsides of Stowe and Club as he whistles up into Abbey, just about the fastest part of the track here. If the wind was blowing in the other direction to what it is today, it depends entirely on wind direction as to which is the fastest point here. It's coming to that bridge or just going down Hanger Straight. Today it's down Hanger Straight. He's about to lap Bertrand Gachot in the Onyx. They, of course, are one of the teams that, as of next race, Hockenheim, they won't have to pre-qualify, which I'm sure will be a great relief to them.
Constructors' Championship points show the McLaren Honda team out front with 65, followed by the Williams-Renault crew with 35, Ferrari with 15, Benetton Ford with 13, and the Tyrrell Ford team with 10. Thus far this year, 23 separate drivers have scored points. 14 teams have scored points. A year ago, there were but 14 drivers and 10 teams that had scored points. So Formula One has grown much, much more competitive this year, despite the obvious superiority of the McLaren Honda crew.
Well, there's no doubt about it. The fields are much closer packed up than they were. Ooh, the Onyx there. Bertrand Gachot using a lot of road as well. The fields are very, very closely packed, and I still think, in spite of what Gordon Murray said earlier on about the normally aspirated engines here at Silverstone, it's a great credit to the designers and the drivers of these cars that, having given up 120 horsepower, both McLaren and Hondas and both Ferraris, which were turbocharged last year, were all 4 quicker than they were last year, here at Silverstone of all places.
There, Nakajima in the Yellow Lotus just got passed by Nannini in the Benetton. So obviously, although Nannini's problems are gone, this man's are not, and that is the other Brabham. That is Martin Brundle. Stefano Modena, his teammate, is already out of the race, and now Martin Brundle is out as well. Big disappointment there for a team that was doing so well in 1989. Now, there are a lot of wonderful things about the English Midlands, but racing here at Silverstone also poses its little problems, and John Bizignano knows more about one of them.
There's a lot of flap down in the Ferrari pits at the moment. There are little black bugs that have inundated Silverstone over this weekend due to the very warm weather, and they are attracted to yellow, and unfortunately, Ferrari and the Lotus boys have been flapping all weekend long. Ferrari boys to have claimed that WD-40 solved this, so they told Lotus, and everyone at Lotus sprayed themselves with WD-40, and of course it was a joke.
Sorry, John, we need to break in. Nigel Mansell has pulled to a stop. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Gerhard Berger. Gerhard Berger, excuse me, has pulled to a stop. So Berger's problems continue. I don't believe he has finished a race in the last 4 or so. In fact, he has yet to finish a race this season, and of course he had that tremendous accident at Imola earlier this year.
Well, of course, that would be very, very strong reason for him to move to McLaren next year, because if there's one thing that McLaren have had over the years, it is incredible reliability. And Ferrari, for the last couple, their reliability has definitely been on the suspect side. Now, of course, it may be that all that oil on the front of Nelson Piquet's car, in fact, is not oil, it's just all those yellow bugs that like, all those little black bugs that like yellow cars.
Well, they're certainly not keeping up with Piquet as he runs in 3rd position behind Prost and Mansell. Nannini still 4th, Gugelmin is 5th, Martini runs 6th, and the Minardi team really would look good picking up a point today. Berger was running 3 laps down in 15th position after that long pit stop at the beginning of the race. So the problems continue for the 29-year-old Austrian Gerhard Berger. Meanwhile, Satoru Nakajima in the number 12 Lotus with Judd V8 power circulating in 9th position right now. And he has the track all to himself. There is the number 11 Lotus. That is Nelson Piquet, the world champion, being shadowed now by Nannini,
who, in spite of a broken exhaust header or whatever's wrong with it, it sounds dreadful, is in fact winding Nelson Piquet in, and is only 3 seconds behind now, and was 6 seconds just a few laps back. So Nannini now pressing for 3rd spot.
Now, what could be going through Nannini's mind? He spun twice in the rain in this race last year and lost points as a result. A week ago in France, he was running very strongly with that Ford Benetton, and the left rear suspension broke, throwing him off the racetrack just as he was pulling up behind Satoru Nakajima's Lotus. Now here is Nannini running these incredible speeds, in excess of 145 mile an hour average at Silverstone, and he's coming up behind yet another Lotus.
Well, if he read the question about superstition, hopefully he'll say he's not superstitious and he won't be thinking of it in quite those glowing terms. But there's no doubt about it, he's going well. At one stage, Gugelmin, who had had that amazing run through the field, who is now pulling into the pits.
Very slowly indeed. Mauricio Gugelmin, who had that incredible flip at the first corner at France last week, and then came back, and after electrical problems in his car, just stormed through the field, now pulls slowly onto pit lane. I had him in my pick 6. That's a big disappointment. Meanwhile, there is Nigel Mansell in the red Ferrari, number 27. 14 cars remain in this race of the 26 that started, but 4 are on the lead lap. Prost, Mansell, Piquet, and Nannini. We'll be back to the British Grand Prix in a moment. The British Grand Prix at Silverstone, England. Bob Barsha and David Hobbs with you, and you're watching Sandro Nannini circulating in 4th place behind Alain Prost, Nigel Mansell, and Nelson Piquet.
Well, I think you'll find that Alessandro Nannini is now 3rd, because that right behind him is Nelson Piquet, who must be having some sort of a problem with his Lotus Judd.
John Bizignano has Mauricio Gugelmin on the pit road.
Mauricio Gugelmin, you were running 5th place. What went wrong?
Basically, my gearbox started to get very stiff, and presumably I was losing oil, and then just jamming 5th. I managed to get out, but just broke inside. I don't know, just I had no drive completely.
That's the same problem that happened to your teammate. Was there any indication of this in practice and qualifying?
Yes, we have a problem with the gearbox, and by the look of it, we still haven't solved it.
Obviously. Tough break, Mauricio.
All right, up front, we've got a tremendous battle. Nigel Mansell and Alain Prost in the last 5 laps have been trading fast lap. Mansell has just reset it at 112.161, 148.21 miles an hour as they keep creeping towards a 150 mile an hour average race lap.
And these 3 cars here, the lead car there was the Onyx, and it was closely followed by Luis Perez Sala, and right behind him is Oliver Gruillard trying to take away 8th spot. There's Nannini in that dreadfully rough-sounding Ford Benetton, but now into 3rd spot behind Nigel Mansell, albeit 22 seconds behind Nigel. Nigel is now 12.5 seconds behind Alain Prost. Just a few laps ago, he was 14.5, so he's making just a little bit of ground, but he hasn't got all that many laps left.
About 8 unofficially does Nigel Mansell have to the end of this race. Meanwhile, getting back to that pre-qualifying, there is Nigel Mansell, the Minardi team with Pierluigi Martini running 5th. That would boost them out of pre-qualifying. They will go into the general qualifying sessions if Martini or his teammate Sala can post a 5th or better. So Mauricio Gugelmin dropping out in the March has paid big dividends to the Minardi team.
And of course, Sala under heavy pressure now from Olivier Gruillard in the Ligier. Emmanuel Pirot about to be overtaken by Nigel Mansell at the end of the straight. Pirot has driven something like 10,000 kilometers in a Formula 1 car, but has only actually done 2 Formula 1 races. He was employed by McLaren Honda to do all the initial testing out in Japan, and as I say, has driven something like 10,000 kilometers in a McLaren Honda, but not doing too well in the old 1988 Benetton Ford, and probably wasn't tremendously smart of Benetton and Ford to shove poor old Johnny Herbert out just in time for the British Grand Prix, who probably would have gone just as well as this anyway. The new car, Nannini, going extremely well, but the old one still not showing a great deal of form, even here at Silverstone.
There is your leader, Alain Prost, about to overtake Terry Boutsen, way back with the Williams in 10th position. Tough day for Williams. Riccardo Patrese has already crashed. Boutsen not running all that well. And this, the 10th anniversary of the first Grand Prix victory for Williams on this very racetrack. Clay Regazzoni back in 1979.
Well, Thierry had that flat tire, which was obviously upsetting his handling at the beginning of the race, but I think he's also just hurting a little bit for power today. Something's wrong with the engine somewhere, I'm sure. Now, that's the new Renault engine, and of course, they've got a new car. A new Williams is coming along, which they're hoping will be ready in time for Hockenheim, but they haven't started the testing yet, and it is only 4 weeks. I'm not Hockenheim, Hungary. They're hoping the car will be ready in time for Hungary, but it's only 4 weeks away, and they're really going to need that new car if they want to remain competitive.
They will be using the Renault V10 engines exclusively next year as well, whereas this man, Alain Prost, or at least his team, since Prost will not be actively driving for McLaren, the McLaren Honda team, it is rumored, will use V12 engines next year.
And the V10 may be made available to some of the other teams. But obviously one doesn't like to speak in terms of wins before that checkered flag falls, but if Prost wins this race, what an incredible service he will have done himself in the last 2 weekends, winning so clearly at France, and of course repeating it here just 1 week later at Silverstone, just when he has announced his retirement from the McLaren team, and nobody as yet knows just where Alain Prost is going to go to. A lot of people say that he is in fact going to take a year's sabbatical and come back to McLaren in 1991. On the other hand, that'll put the guy, he'll be 36 years old, and I'm not sure myself whether that would be a very good thing to go away from Formula 1 for a whole year and try and come back to it.
There is Nigel Mansell, and if the will of the crowd could push a man up into first place, here is the man who would be leading this race right now, because you know everybody in this crowd is cheering for Nigel Mansell. With 4 laps to go in the British Grand Prix, it is Prost, Mansell, Nannini, Piquet, Martini, and Luis Sala in the 6th position. So Minardi could pick up the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, relatively speaking. For the Minardi team to take 5th and 6th would be an enormous achievement. should he hold on for victory, Alain Prost will have his third British Grand Prix. He'll take his place in a line that includes Jimmy Clark, the legendary late driver from Scotland who won this race 5 times, Sir Jack Brabham of Australia, and Niki Lauda, the 3-time former world champion, each won it 3 times. Prost will have his third win, setting him apart from Nigel Mansell, Emerson Fittipaldi, Jackie Stewart, Alberto Ascari, Froilan Gonzalez, and Sterling Moss, who each have won this race twice.
Sterling Moss, of course, one of the winningest drivers in Formula One, never to have won the World Championship. There we see Derek Warwick in the bottom of the pictures in the US F&G Arrows, just about to be put another lap down by Alain Prost. Arrows not having a good weekend. For the first time since 1984, poor old Eddie Cheever didn't even make it into the race. So there's obviously going to have to be some work done on the cars or drivers or the entire combination.
There is your leader, Alain Prost, by 14 seconds over Nigel Mansell, who has reset fast lap, touching almost 149 miles an hour. We'll be right back to Britain. Closing laps of the British Grand Prix. Bob Varsha, David Hobbs with you at our announced position. Down on pit lane, John Bizignano. And we hope you've been enjoying what has been a great race to this point.
Well, Alain Prost must be doing something right at the moment, because Nigel Mansell keeps on setting the fastest lap, just a tick under 150 miles an hour now for the lap average, and somehow in the last 2 laps he's lost 3 more seconds. So old Alain Prost must be putting on the pressure somewhere.
Well, apparently Alain Prost has not taken back fast lap yet in pursuit of his 38th victory. Meanwhile, this man, Nigel Mansell, the darling of the English crowd, running in second position. Sandro Nannini third, Nelson Piquet fourth, Pierluigi Martini fifth, Luis Sala of Spain sixth, followed by Olivier Grilliard, Satoru Nakajima, Derek Warwick in the US F&G Arrows, Terry Boutsen, the Williams with Renault Power, Emmanuel Thurot in the Benetton, Bertrand Gachot running in the Onyx. Those 12 cars are the only remaining ones of the 26 that started the race. Ayrton Senna led early, but then on the 11th lap spun off of the racetrack. Attrition has been the dominant factor thus far, and Alain Prost has led since the departure of his teammate. We have 1 lap to go.
Down into Beckett for the last time, scene of his unfortunate teammate's demise earlier on in this race. Swings wide to Chapel Curve there, down onto Hanger Straight for the last time, up into 6th speed. Derek Warwick trailing along behind him. Warwick now running in 9th spot. Warwick still possibly hurting still from that go-kart accident 2 weeks ago on the Isle of Jersey, his home.
That's right, he spun him in a cart and hit a parked vehicle, breaking some small bones in his back and giving him some very deep bruises. But after a 1-race layoff, Derek Warwick back in the cockpit, driving in pain, but doing well today for the Arrows team.
Alain Prost really taking it cool on this last lap, not using up any road at all, and has stretched his lead another second to Nigel Mansell.
Still Nigel Mansell holds fast lap. We anticipate seeing a checkered flag this time around, coming off the final trip through Woodcote onto the front straightaway. The checkered flag, will it wave? And it does, for Alain Prost of France. In fact, 2 checkered flags wave, one in a man in a blue shirt and one of the marshals as well, signaling the rest of the field that the checkers has gone out. And there, with a wave to the crowd, the valiant Nigel Mansell, who lost so much time when the right front tire deflated. He had to creep around, bit for tires, got back out, touched 150 miles an hour for average lap speed around this 2.97-mile race course, and a great chorus of cheers goes up for Mansell. He may drive for the most famous Italian Grand Prix team of all, but he is still very much an Englishman. And there is your winner, Alain Prost, his record-breaking 38th career Formula One victory.
When you think that someone like Eddie Cheever has done 126 races and hasn't had a win yet, and Alain Prost has had 38 wins. Listen to that crowd for Nigel Mansell.
As the Union Jacks wave over Silverstone, England, there is your winner, Alain Prost, and we'll be back after this. Silverstone, England. Bob Varsha, David Hobbs, and John Bizignano with you as Nigel Mansell waves to the adoring multitudes here at the British Grand Prix after a sterling second-place finish. Alain Prost scoring his 38th career Formula One victory, 21 of 24 Formula One victories for the McLaren team, winning 21 of the last 24 races. Taking a look at our pick six on the day, David, you picked Mansell to win with Prost, Nannini, and Piquet all in the top six, so you pick up 4 points on the day.
There we are these days, the demands of television.
Well, I really did think that Mansell would probably rise to the occasion today and might actually put it over Prost, but that McLaren Honda steamroller just continued in its inexorable way, and Alain Prost was never really seriously threatened. And then, of course, Nigel did have a bit of bad luck with cutting that tyre just at the wrong part of the circuit and lost too much time. Nannini and Piquet absolutely did as well as I thought. In fact, did better than I thought he would do. He would have come third, but obviously something went wrong towards the end there. Poor old Berger, who was another one of my choices, of course, didn't make it at all.
John Bizignano picked Mansell to win, got close. He also had Prost and Piquet in the top six to score 3 points. John?
Well, I think it's the water at the Hobbs mansion. I didn't stay at the mansion, David. I think it's the water there. I think you two guys ganged up on me. David, you with 4 points, and of course Bob with 4 points. And I'm sorry, 3 points. This is devastating to me down here in the pit lane. I think about this all night long. But anyway, Nigel Mansell, I am a bit of a romanticist. The crowd here was fantastic when he was up on the rostrum and the champagne was going. But no one was more happy here around the winner's circle than the Minardi team. They are out of pre-qualifying. And what pressure that takes off the entire team and the entire drivers. I think we have to make a big point of that Minardi has really come along here. A Formula 2 team that went Formula 1 racing with quite a bit of success.
They have indeed. They are now firmly a member of the Formula One family. I, of course, missed out picking Senna to win, but with Mansell in second place, I get 2 points. Prost and Nannini both coming home in the top six to make it 4 points for me, 4 for David, and 3 for John. You saw the 3 winners preparing for their interviews in the Formula One Constructors Area interview bay, and we'll be back to the British Grand Prix for final results, updating of points, and final thoughts after this. Stand by. We'll be back from Britain in a moment. Particularly so here in England, where history is something you don't go to a museum to see, but you live with. ESPN Speed World coverage of the British Formula One Grand Prix has been brought to you by Alfa Romeo and your local Alfa Romeo dealer, who invite you to drive a Spider today. By Pirelli Tires, original equipment on the world's finest automobiles. By Quaker State Motor Oil, the big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. And by Busch Beer, the beer with a taste as smooth as its name. Here's a look at the results of today's British Grand Prix. Alain Prost of France coming home with his 38th career win over Nigel Mansell, Sandro Nannini, Nelson Piquet, and of course the stars of the day, Pierluigi Martini and Luis Perez Sala with the Minardi team. Points thus far in 1989 with the season half over. Alain Prost en route to his third potential world championship with 47 points, a 20-point lead over teammate Ayrton Senna, who dropped out today. Riccardo Patrese, Nigel Mansell, Terry Boutsen, and Sandro Nannini following in order. Constructors' points show McLaren Honda way out front with 74 over Williams Renault, Ferrari, the Benetton, Tyrrell, and Dallara teams. But of course, Minardi picking up 3 important points today. John Bizignano is standing by now in the pit lane.
Ron Dennis, director of McLaren Racing. A very proud day for you. A British team winning the British Grand Prix.
Yes, it was a really special win for us. Not so much because it's in England, but because of all the problems we had in practice. Now the team, not only the guys here, but all the guys back in the factory, really had to work hard.
What happened to Ayrton Senna?
Had some gear selection problem from the beginning and just missed third gear. And that speed, that corner, it's you can't afford to have that sort of problem. And unfortunately, he spun.
Doesn't take much. Congratulations. Back to Bob Varsha.
Our congratulations also to Ron Dennis and to Alain Prost on his record-extending 38th win. Don't forget, in 2 weeks, we'll be coming to you with the beginning of the second half of the Formula One season for 1989 from the Hockenheim Ring in West Germany, the Grand Prix of Germany, Sunday, July 30th at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific.